Korean Peninsula, the fragile peace of the post-war years is beginning to crack. In the north, Kim Il-sung intensifies military preparations along the 38th parallel. With Soviet advisors and newly supplied weapons, the North Korean army grows stronger by the week. Kim dreams of reunifying the nation, even if it means launching a full-scale war. Meanwhile, in the south, President Syngman Rhee fears an imminent invasion. He appeals to the United States for more military aid, but Washington hesitates, unwilling to commit American troops so soon after World War II. Instead, American support comes in the form of training and limited equipment, leaving South Korea vulnerable. By March 1950, both halves of Korea are locked in a tense standoff, each side seeking powerful allies and preparing for a confrontation that seems increasingly inevitable. High on the roof of the world, tensions rise between Tibet and the newly founded People's Republic of China. From Beijing's perspective, Tibet is not a foreign land, but a province that has drifted away during decades of chaos and foreign intervention. For centuries, the relationship between China and Tibet has shifted like the mountain winds, sometimes marked by spiritual alliance, sometimes by military conquest. Now, Mao Zedong seeks to restore central control. In March 1950, Chinese forces begin their preparations along the Tibetan border. Beijing frames this as a mission of liberation and unification, while in Lhasa, Tibetan leaders scramble to preserve their autonomy through diplomacy. What is unfolding is not a sudden clash between good and evil, but the modern chapter of a centuries-old struggle for sovereignty, faith, and survival in one of the world's most isolated regions. For 4 long years, France has fought a bitter war in Indochina. Since 1946, French forces have struggled to contain the Viet Minh, a communist-led independence movement under Ho Chi Minh. The cost has been staggering. Thousands of French soldiers and colonial troops killed, tens of thousands of Vietnamese lives lost, and a war budget draining Paris at a time when Europe itself is still rebuilding from World War II. In early 1950, the conflict takes a dangerous turn. Both China and the Soviet Union officially recognize Ho Chi Minh's government, and Chinese aid begins to flow across the border. Weapons, ammunition, and advisors that dramatically strengthen the Viet Minh. In March, France responds by sending fresh reinforcements to the region. But behind this decision lies a grim reality. Each new battalion sent to Indochina deepens France's commitment to a war that is becoming harder to win, and increasingly central to the global struggle between East and West. Syria remains one of the most unstable countries in the Middle East. In just 9 months during 1949, the nation endured 3 military coups, each one toppling the last in a cycle of chaos and intrigue. By March 1950, Colonel Adib Shishakli has emerged as the true power behind the scenes. Though a civilian government remains nominally in place, Shishakli controls the army and dictates the direction of the state. This month, a new constitution is proclaimed, presented as a return to democracy. But for many Syrians, it is clear that real authority rests not in the parliament, but in the hands of the generals. In Egypt, the streets are restless. King Farouk faces growing opposition from a population tired of corruption and foreign control. Students lead the charge, pouring into the streets of Cairo and Alexandria. Their demands are diverse, reflecting the fragmented politics of the country. Some call for liberal reforms and true parliamentary democracy. Others rally behind socialist and communist ideals inspired by Moscow. And many are influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood, seeking to build an Egypt guided by Islamic principles. In March 1950, These factions unite in anger against the monarchy and the lingering British presence. The protests reveal a nation on the brink of transformation, where competing visions of Egypt's future collide in the heart of its universities. In Northern Europe, NATO is gaining strength. Norway and Denmark, both recent members of the alliance, step up their commitments to collective defense. Facing the Soviet Union across the Arctic Circle, these countries see NATO as essential for their survival. France, a founding member of the alliance, takes a more cautious approach. Much of its army and budget are tied down in Indochina, leaving fewer resources for European defense. Paris also worries about losing autonomy to Washington and London. As a result, French support for NATO grows slowly, marked by hesitation rather than outright refusal. This contrast highlights a divide within the Western Bloc. Some nations rush to integrate, while others proceed carefully, balancing national priorities with collective security. 2 years after breaking with Stalin, Yugoslavia faces a crushing embargo. Cut off from all trade with the Soviet bloc, its factories lack raw materials and its economy teeters on the brink of collapse. In March 1950, Tito begins a bold pivot to the west. For the first time, Yugoslavia opens trade routes with Britain, France, and the United States. The goods are strictly civilian. Wood, copper, and farm products flow out while machinery, medicine, and textiles flow in. It is not yet a military alliance, but these early exchanges marked a historic shift, a communist state breaking free of Moscow's grip and finding lifeline partners in its former enemies. In Britain's Gold Coast colony, a new leader rises. Kwame Nkrumah studied in the United States and Britain, learning the language and politics of the empire. Now he turns that knowledge against colonial rule. His demand is clear: immediate independence, not gradual reform. In January 1950, his party launches a campaign of strikes and protests known as Positive Action. The colonial government responds by arresting Nkrumah in February. But the move backfires. From his prison cell, Nkrumah becomes a symbol of resistance. His party grows stronger and his message spreads across towns and villages. By March 1950, it is clear that Nkrumah is no longer just a local activist. He is the voice of a new African nationalism that Britain will soon have to confront. In South Africa, racial segregation becomes law. The white-led National Party, in power since 1948, begins to formalize its vision of apartheid. A new Population Registration Act classifies every citizen by race: white, black, colored, or Indian. Each group will now live under separate rules. Another law, the Group Areas Act, prepares the forced relocation of entire communities. Cities will be divided into exclusive zones, with prime areas reserved for whites. For now, opposition remains limited. The African National Congress protests peacefully, but its influence is small, and the state's power overwhelming. By March 1950, the framework of apartheid is in place, setting the stage for decades of conflict and resistance. In Chile, copper is called the nation's salary. It is the backbone of the economy and the source of fierce political conflict. Most major mines are owned by foreign companies, mainly American giants like Anaconda and Kennecott. Profits leave the country while many Chileans live in poverty. President Gabriel González Videla came to power with leftist allies and once supported reform. In theory, he favors nationalizing copper to fund schools, roads, and social programs. But the Cold War has changed everything. The United States warns that nationalization would be seen as a hostile act. Chilean elites side with Washington, fearing they will lose their wealth and influence. By March 1950, Videla is trapped between two worlds. The people demand justice and control of their own resources. Foreign powers demand stability and continued profits. His government delays any decision, but the question of copper will not go away. It is a struggle that will define Chile's future for decades to come.